Hello.
Morning.
Thank you. So, I am back yet again. You're probably thinking, when are we going to see the last of this person? Well, it's very soon. But thanks so much for having me as often as you have. It's been way too much. But as someone had said, I think it was Chris before, I've been teaching a block course at Kerry Baptist all week and doing various other things as well. So there's a little bit of weariness in the spirit. If I stammer and stutter over a few words, just laugh. It's all good. So before I start, do you remember I came through one time and I had a book called Wild Ones? You know, take a walk on the wild side. Another one of the books that I've written is this one here, and it's called Alongsiders. It's very good. Who's read it? Anyone read it? Did you like it? Thank you. Big thumb. 2 thumbs. Oh, high 10. That's brilliant. So, I mean, have you met people and on their forehead, it's almost like they've got I am complex? Have you met those kind of people? Are you seated next to one? Look at their foreheads, everyone. I know there are just some people I don't know about, and you bump into them into life, and you know you've got to get alongside them. But everything is screaming inside of you not to do so. Who can relate to this? Show of hands. Yeah, okay. This is a book, it's practical wisdom on how to get alongside people, which is basically going to my theme today, the text that has been given to me. So I have some copies here. No, honestly, it's a very good book, you know, it's a bestseller. I have got some copies here, and they're $20, as I said before. If you want me to sign them, $22.50. And there are some also out in the admin centre in the foyer there. If you haven't got $20, you make an arrangement, and there are copies out there as well. So that's the book, Alongsiders. Now for the book. Okay, that's just slightly ahead of mine. No, this book here, the Bible. Let me read this out to you, okay? Are you good, by the way? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being fantastic, 1 like, I'm in the pits. What number would you give yourself? Share that with the person next to you. Okay, friends. Here we go. By the way, did you notice I've got my 3rd set on? For those who were here last Sunday, I said that every time I come here, I always have the same set of clothes. But last Sunday, I changed. During the week, I bought. And so I've got a 3rd set of clothes now. There you go. Do you like them? Okay. No. I'm in a naughty mood this morning, so as you could probably guess. So here we go. Let me read out from Luke chapter 6. This is the text that the team gave me. Luke 6:27 following. But this is my word, Jesus continued, for those of you who are listening. Love your enemies. Do good to people who hate you. Bless people who curse you. Pray for people who treat you badly. Oh my goodness. If someone hits you on the cheek, offer him the other one. If someone takes away your coat, don't stop them taking your shirt. Give to everyone who asks you, and don't ask for things back when people have taken them. Oh my goodness. Whatsoever you want people to do to you, do that to them. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Think about it. Even sinners love people who love them. Or again, if you do good only to people who do good to you, that credit, what credit is that to you? Sinners do that too. If you lend only to people you expect to get things back from, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get paid back. No, love your enemies, do good, and lend without expecting any return. Your reward will be great. You will be children of the highest. He is generous, you see, to the stingy and wicked. You must be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. There's no way that I can do all of this morning. There's just too much in there. Yes? So I'm going to pick out some bits and pieces from this passage. Do you like the Bible that I read from? Do you like the words there? Have you heard of a person called Tom Wright? Some of you, it's his paraphrase, if you like, translation of the Bible. He's probably arguably the lead theologian, New Testament theologian today. Anyway, I had him at Oxford University. So, well, friends, tomorrow I drive to Whanganui, back home. I've been up here for a couple of weeks, or about 10 days, and so I go back down. And in Whanganui we've got this 1924 built abode, it's quirky, it's rustic, it's got flax, it's got natives on the section, it's got gabled windows. We left, as I said, 2 years ago from South Auckland. And I don't think I've told you how we got to go there. Have I told you that? I don't think I have. So basically, it kind of goes like this. When we were living in South Auckland, we lived in this, we rented out this big house and we took all manner of people in. Gosh, it was hard work, but that's what we did. And so Ruby and I, we had our singular room. This was in South Mall, Manarewa, South Auckland. We had our single room. And there was one particular Sunday afternoon and I was in our room and it was about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And suddenly, I was thinking about the rugby, I don't know, I was thinking about something, but then suddenly, and most unexpectedly, a biblical reference, just the reference, gate crashed into my consciousness, boom, and just got my attention straight away. And I didn't know what the reference was, all I had was the Bible verse reference, but I didn't know what the verse said. So I pulled my mobile out of my trowel, out of my pocket, and put in the verse and read it, and it got my attention. And I thought, surely not. So then I thought, well, I better check out on a hard copy Bible. So I leant over to the bed, picked out a hard copy Bible, picked the Bible up, and I tell you not to lie, but the Bible fell open to the very page where this verse was. And the verse basically said, it's time for your ship to leave this harbour and for you to go to your own land. And where is my own land? Where was I raised? In Whanganui. Now, Ruby was out, I decided not to say anything to Ruby at all and to see what she would say coming back. So 3 hours later, she came back, she came into the room, I hadn't said a thing, and she said, Mick, I've had this uncanny feeling that we're to go to our own place, our own tribe, our own people. Now, I have very few hairs on my head, but they tingled at that moment. And so we went into a discernment process, and about 8 weeks later, we made 2 decisions. 1, to leave this harbour, Auckland Harbour, and 2, to go to our own land. So we went down to Whanganui. So we went, and Ruby went out on Trade Me, and she found this house that she really liked. We've never really had a dream home because of mission and ministry, go anywhere, but she found this dream home. And we were able to buy it. Whanganui at that time, lowest prices, in the country. So we were able to buy this place. And then we shot down, and truck arrived, unpacked everything, and out back on this 1/4-acre section, there were these fruit trees, lovely fruit trees. And one of the fruit trees was a red Dorit? No, black Dorit. The plums. Black Doris, I always get it wrong. There was this tree laden hundreds and hundreds, arguably no exaggeration, with black Doris plums. And so we looked at that tree and we thought, wow, when we get back from speaking at a conference, because we had to go and speak at a conference a few days after getting there, when we get back, we are going to stew those plums, bottle those plums. We're going to do everything with those plums and then eat them. So we got the jars and and then we went away, as I said, to go on a conference. And we came back. Now get this, people. We came back. There was not one plum on the tree. The tree was denuded. There wasn't a single plum. Someone had stolen our plums. So when any person came near our house, I would walk up to them and I would say, "Did you take our plums?" I absolutely did. And then about a week after being a detective trying to work it all out, one of our neighbors, we're surrounded by neighbors, so I'm camouflaging the story, but one of our neighbors was just driving by and I walked up to the car and the neighbor slowed down and the window came down and I said, "Oh, someone's taken our plums, all our plums." He went as red as a plum. And then he said, he took them. And I already knew he had 2 plum trees. He had 2 plum trees and he took all our plums. So, when you get into these situations, it's sort of like, what do you do? And you've got 20 seconds. That's all you've got. And at that point, I could have made him number 1 public enemy, if you know what I mean. I could have done that. But what I said instead, I wanted to rescue the moment as fast as I could. I said, "Oh, thank goodness it was you. Thank goodness it was you. Thank goodness it wasn't a stranger down the road who jumped the fence. Oh, thank goodness it was you." And he knew exactly what I was doing, that I was just trying to make him feel better. I didn't want to turn him into an enemy. I just wanted, to rescue the moment. Well, this guy, he's a bottler and he's a brewer. So he bottles everything and he home brews. The last 2 years in Wanganui have been absolutely fantastic. He's been giving us stuff left, right, and centre. And we've become actually very, 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 very good friends. So, have you got an enemy? Have you got an enemy in your life? Have you? Have you got someone? I don't know. It's so easy to make enemies, actually, isn't it? It can be a little thing like plums. I heard of another situation, and it was goat's urine. There was a neighbor and a fence and a neighbor, and the 2 neighbors were talking to each other, and as they were talking, this neighbor's goat urinated, and somehow it splashed through the fence onto the other guy's shoes. And they didn't speak for years. I heard of another situation where, I don't know, a couple, bless them, they often enjoyed somewhat vibrant sex. Very active, very noisy, don't imagine it too much. And then this neighbor went in to complain about their active sex life. It's just that they chose the wrong couple, because it was someone over here, not over here, who was doing and so of course they fell out. Have you fallen out with anybody? Have you got an enemy at your workplace? Someone that have you got someone in your neighborhood? Have you got someone, I don't know, in this church? Have you got someone in your family? We do fall out with each other, don't we? Who doesn't? Show of hands. That's right. So we do fall out with each other, and we can turn someone very easily into an enemy. Do you know how you do it? It's done in 3 moves. See, first off, you start to separate yourself from that person. "Oh, I don't want to have anything more to do with you, actually. You stole my plums." Do you know what I mean? So you separate yourself off. That's first move. Second move is what is the second move? I'm having a memory block here. First move is you separate them off. Oh, the second move. Oh, you think you're better than them. I'd never pinch plums. I'd never, allow my goat to yawn. Do you know what I mean? So the first move is you actually separate yourself off, don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, thank you very much. The second move is you think you're better than them. And then the third move is, you dehumanize them, you de-godize them, you start to see them now as a thing. Oh, that's the neighbor. It's no longer Jack, it's the neighbor. Oh, that's the colleague, but it's no longer Sally at work. Do you get it? So that's how you make enemies. So back to my question. Have you got an enemy? Show of hands. No. When we moved to Wanganui, we made it a practice of going to the farmer's market. Love farmer's markets. Go to the farmer's market, and sometimes you just end up talking to strangers. My wife, Ruby, she ended up talking to a complete stranger one Saturday morning at the farmer's market. And this lady opened up and told her a story that basically went like this, that his mum, that's her, she's got a daughter, his mum, next door neighbour. This child said something inappropriate to this mum across the fence. So this mum told this mum off for what her daughter had done. Did you get all that? It was a bit confusing. But the upshot of it all was that they stopped talking to each other for years. Absolute years. They separated themselves off, saw each other as inferior, all that kind of stuff. Didn't talk to each other for years. And then this mum heard that this mum was seriously ill. And this mum saw her husband at the gate, so she went up to hubby and said, "Can I go see your wife?" And he said, "Sure, come on." And so she went into the house, went into the bedroom, and she had tubes coming out all of her body. She was seriously ill. They reconciled. They had a wonderful chat. They talked about their kids. And 1 week later, she died. And then this mum said to Ruby, "I'm so glad I got the chance to reconcile with my neighbour before she died, but I'll never, never, never again fall out with someone where we don't talk for years." So if it's not your neighbour, is it someone in your family? Oh man, families, aren't they complicated? People, show of hands on this one, definite. You find family complicated? Oh, lots of family people fall out with each other. Yes? Give me a yes. Thank you. Lots of family. Look, who plays golf here? Man, this church aren't into golf, nor am I actually, but we've got a lady there. Look, the person who just recently won the Masters, US Masters in Augusta, his name was Richard someone. Do you know that when he got married, this was out in the open. This is not me telling, this is not me being gossiping. In 2012, he got married, and he wouldn't let his parents or sister come to the wedding. I mean, families, they so fall out with each other. When he was playing the Masters, he found out that his mother, his parents, and his sister were on the grounds of the golf course, and he had them escorted off. Yeah. And we all go, oh. But actually, a lot of us in this room have fallen out with a brother, sister, an uncle, an aunt, a grandmother, a parent. I mean, so we fall out with people in our workplaces. We fall out of, have you got a boss from hell? Have you got a toxic workmate? We so easily make enemies in families, neighborhoods, workplaces. What about church? Of course not. People don't fall out here, do they? People don't get so upset with each other in this church that they walk out that door and you never see them again. Not. Look, every church in the land has people who fall out with each other. And you may have been so close with them in the same small group. And some little thing happens. start to drift apart. You get distance between you and them. You see them as inferior. How dare they? I would never do that. And then they're no longer Jack Christian. They're it. Do you see what I mean? So, if you have an enemy, someone that you've just fallen out with, I know you've done something, they've done something, it's gone south, it's gone custard, it's gone belly up, it's gone terrible, it smells bad, it looks bad. You know what I mean? What do? Well, Jesus said something in here. And Jesus said in this text, love your enemy. And then he goes on to say, if someone swipes you on the cheek, what are you meant to do? So could we all do that now? Jesus said, if someone swipes you, like your enemy swipes you, then turn the other cheek. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that you you just take anything that comes your way, you just let him or her do whatever, walk all over you, let the mean stuff continue? Is that what Jesus is saying? Go all passive, be a doormat. Is that what's being said here? No, I need a volunteer. You, thank you. Okay. Yes, that's you. Yes. Thank you. Come up. I'm going to slap you. Yeah. You can stand there. He said something you didn't hear. Okay. Now, what's your name? Terry. So, I'm going to slap Terry, right? And he's got to turn the other cheek. This is what Jesus said, the great master. Okay. So, Terry, in the first...
Tell me which one.
I got to slap your right cheek. Okay. That's what Jesus said. Yeah. If your enemy slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. Now, before I get to Terry, before I get to him, in the first century AD, Jesus' day, in the first century AD culture, you didn't slap people with the left hand. That was used for hygienic purposes. Okay, we all know that, the toilet stuff. So that was not, you just had this hand here. You always used your right hand. And you never went that way. It was a backhand. It was the ultimate act of insult. So to slap someone in the first century AD, you went that way. Okay? So now, Jesus said, if someone slaps you on the right cheek, which is his right cheek? Everyone point to it. It's this one here. Okay, now you watch this. So just imagine that, is it Terry? Just imagine,
Go for it.
He's giving me the evils now. Just imagine I slap Terry like that. Okay, now I've slapped him. Now you've got to turn the other cheek. Now, for me to slap the other cheek, what do I hit? What do I hit? Can I get to the cheek? No. What do I hit? The nose. And you've got a big one.
Thank you. You can use that.
No, you're not allowed to. You see, you see what Jesus is saying? That you can go now. Give him a round, Rolio. That's right. Thanks, Terry. See, like Jesus is saying, if you've got an enemy in your life, do the unexpected. Do the unexpected. Take them out by surprise. Just do that which, it somehow changes the ball game. That's what Jesus is saying here. Look, Jesus goes on to say, look, if you've given a shirt as, to a creditor, and then he's complaining that you kind of haven't paid things back, but in a sense, he's kind of ripping you off. What does Jesus say? Tell me. What does Jesus say in the passage? He says, give your other cloak. Now, in those days, you didn't wear undies. So if you gave your other cloak, that renders you what? It renders you naked. Now, in the first century AD, when someone is naked, who really is made to feel quite difficult? Is it the person who is naked, or is it the person who sees the nakedness? It's the person who sees the nakedness. Do you get what I'm trying to say here, people? That if you've got someone in your life and things have gone badly and you're kind of enemies, what Jesus is saying is, look, be creative. Be imaginative. I mean, do the unexpected. Do something which is unusual. Take them by surprise. You take the heat out of it when you do that. That's what he's meaning here. I mean, what he's trying to say, I think, with some people in our lives, do the very best thing for the very worst person. Could you just repeat that to the person next to you? In other words, what Jesus is saying here, if you are tempted to be nasty to someone, instead, let there be lavish generosity. Now look, I've told you this story before I checked my notes, but you've probably forgotten. And it kind of goes like this. That, I was speaking once somewhere in New Zealand, as I do, and as I was speaking, the TV cameras, TV1, came racing through the door, and they started to film me. And I had a slight ego moment, they probably heard I was in town, but they carried on filming, and at the end of my thing, I got down from the platform, and I went to the leaders, and I said, why the TV cameras? And they said, haven't you heard? And I said, heard what? Haven't you heard about the good doctor in town? I said, no, please do tell. And so they told me about the doctor. Do you remember the story? They told me about the doctor who used to treat people's bodies in his medical clinic, but now he doesn't treat bodies in his clinic. He serves up bodies in the brothel. He turned his medical clinic into a brothel. And so I was speaking at this church. The TV cameras came through. Why? Because the church were making protest. The church were making protest. The church had almost made him into enemy. Public, number one enemy. So I tossed and turned that night and met with the leadership the following morning. I said, I just need to get something clear. Who has invited him for a meal? And no one had. No one had. And that's what Jesus is getting at. Do good. Lavish generosity. Do good. Do something good. Look, sometimes with an enemy, I don't know, sometimes it's still unsafe to be in the company of an enemy, but we can still do something then around unsafe people. When my daughter, she was 12, she went to a public swimming pool, and after swimming, she went into the changing room, and she took her togs off, and there were a lot of other girls in there too, and she started to towel off. And as she was toweling off, she looked up into the ceiling and she saw a man looking at her and the other girls who were naked. And that became a deeply traumatizing moment for our young Jo, who, as I say, was 12 at the time. So she reported it to the managers of the pool, the police were called, and so forth and so on. But for the next sort of week, us as parents, mum and dad, we had to sit with Jo, just sit with her, come alongside her. But after about a week, I said to Jo, now we need to pray for him. And the look of shock on her face. What do you mean pray for him? Why should we pray for him? Now, I could understand that coming from a 12-year-old girl. But I said, God adores him. God absolutely adores him. Doesn't like what he's done, but absolutely adores him. And we need to pray for him. And so we did. Yesterday, Jo turned 30. Her job in life now is a sex therapist. Did you make that connection? In other words, here there was a perpetrator. And he was a and it was around unhealthy sexual practices. But when Joe learnt to love and pray for enemy, hopefully something happened to the guy, but something happened in Joe. And she has now given over her life to people who've got sex-related health issues, both outside of the church and, let me tell you, inside of the church as well. Because there'll be a number of people here this morning and you do have sex-related health issues. And so Joe, who got deeply hurt by a perpetrator, learned how to love a person. And it did something in her. And that's how God can turn things around. He's the turnaround God. But if you don't experience turnaround with someone in your family, in your job, in your neighborhood, or wherever, something else will happen to you that is not good. And the best way I can illustrate this is to tell you that there is a woman, and arguably she's the most ugly, mean-spirited, bitter woman that anyone could meet. And I'll tell you why. It says, when she was 19, now get this, when she was 19, 3 days before her wedding, her fiance hooked up with her sister. How would you feel? 3 days before her wedding, her fiance ran off with her sister. And that became a deeply humiliating, hurtful time for her. You can get that, eh? And then over the course of the next 50 years, hear that, 50 years, her sister kept trying to reconcile with the enemy. Kept trying to reconcile. But each and every time over 50 years that this sister kept trying to reconcile, she didn't move an inch from her hate. And it got to a point where she made so many decisions for hate that in the end, hate made so many decisions for her. It got to a point where she no longer chose. When your life is dominated by a negative emotion, it colors your life for the rest of your life. And if you keep making decisions against reconciliation and against love, something happens inside of you where you become bitterness and you become hate. The very thing that first off started as a decision is now your nature. So, currently in your life, are you keeping someone distant? Currently in your life, is there someone that you think you're, I never do that, I'm better than them? Is there someone in your life, family, neighborhood, workplace, church, where there needs to be love? I've shared the story, and with this I'm done. Do you remember the story about two monks? And they came across a stretch of water, and there was a lady in distress. And the elder monk said to her, "My dear, what is the problem?" And she said, "I want to get across the stretch of water without my feet getting wet." And he said, "No problemo." So he went to her, clutched her, picked her up, and held her to his chest. And he said to the younger monk, "Come on, let's go." And they walked across the water. And when they got to the other side, he put her down. She went on her merry way. The older monk said to the younger monk, "We've got to get to the monastery." They got to the monastery. They got to the gates of the monastery. And then at that point, the younger monk turned on the older monk and said, "Naughty, naughty, naughty. We're not meant to pick up girls like that." And then the older, wise, sage-like monk, get this, he said to the younger monk, "Isn't it interesting? I picked her up and carried her across the water, and you're carrying her still." Tick-tock, tick-tock. Did you get that? are carrying her still. There are people in this room and you are still carrying stuff. Still carrying still. And I give you fair warning. I'm Dr. Phil this morning. I give you fair warning. If you carry things still, look, I tell you, a part of you will turn to ice. That's what happens. A part turns to ice. And then when you do life with other people, they'll somehow pick up that you're not fully present to the moment. Why? Because you're only 60% there, because 40% is turned to ice. That's what happens. So what needs to happen, even this morning starting now, is a meltdown where we invite the Holy Spirit and we allow the Holy Spirit to come in and for there to be a meltdown. Look, I've noticed people, because I've been here way too often, and I've noticed as I've come here that there is this practice where you have people who come up and they're willing to pray for you. But I've also noticed that very few of you avail yourselves of that. And I'm an observer, and I thought, who's not to want to do this? I mean, if you're carrying stuff still, who's not to want to be prayed for? Look, I've had seasons in my life where I'm the first up. You can probably understand why. But I'd be the first one that wanting to come up for people to pray. And there are some of you here and you're carrying still. So what I'm going to do, if the musos are around or just the piano, just some soft music, and I'm going to invite the people who love to pray and who can keep confidences, who are safe people, if you would like to come to the front. And I'd like the rest of you to stand, please. I'd like you to stand. So for those who have a ministry and just praying for people, you like to do this stuff, you know how to do it appropriately, to invite God's Holy Spirit to come and touch areas in our lives where, I don't know, there may be a lack of forgiveness, there's a hardness, there's a bitterness, there is hate work, there is just, I don't know, enmity. There's something between you and another, and it might be over a small thing or a big thing. It might be something